Welcome in, everybody. Ready to dive into Marbella Vibes.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're looking at real estate and mortgage credit investment, specifically on the Costa del Sol.
Okay.
And, you gave us all this material, company presentations, investment breakdowns, all that good stuff. But what really stood out,
Yeah.
Marbella Vibes, they're all about getting properties below market value.
Oh, that's interesting. So how are they pulling that off?
Well, that's what we're going to find out, right?
Right.
But they're not just some small-time operation. They want to be like the name on the Costa del Sol.
Oh, ambitious.
Right. Buying credit, auctions, portfolio management, the whole 9 yards.
Huh. And their mission? Like, what's the driving force?
They say it's all about giving investors the absolute best return on their real estate investment.
Okay, but everyone says that, right? What makes them different?
Well, they're leaning hard on this expertise in options and mortgage credit purchases.
Interesting.
But here's the thing. They're not just targeting like one type of investor. They're going after everyone. Individual savers, private investors, those big wealth management firms, even developers and builders.
Wow, that's a wide range. So do they actually have something for everybody, or is that just marketing?
That's a good question. I mean, their materials highlight a bunch of different strategies. Like one thing they're pushing is buying up these mortgage credits.
Mortgage credit.
And yeah, backed by properties, but get this, at reduced prices. So investors could snag some high-value properties for a steal.
Okay, that sounds promising, but what's the catch? There's got to be a catch. High reward, high risk, right?
You're not wrong. I mean, you really need to know your stuff when it comes to the Spanish legal system and the real estate market there.
Yeah, that's not something you just jump into.
No, but that's where Marbella Vibes says their expertise comes in. They also have this thing called assignment of foreclosures. Basically, investors can sell their rights to a property before the auction even happens.
So quick profit, no long-term commitment. Interesting.
Right. But maybe not as much upside as actually owning the property?
Makes sense. What about investors who are in it for the long game? What do they offer?
Well, for those folks, they've got the auction adjudication route. You acquire a property during the option, and then you've got all the control. You can sell it, rent it out, whatever you want.
Okay, so they've got options. But how does someone actually get started with them? What are the different ways to invest?
They've got two main models, independent and collaborative. Independent is pretty straightforward. You're calling the shots. They're just the facilitator. Of course, they charge a fee.
Right, nothing's free. So what's the fee like?
Between 5 and 12% of the credit price. It depends on how complicated things get.
Okay, makes sense. More work for them, higher fee.
Oh.
What about the collaborative model?
This one is more hands-off. Marbella Vibes handles everything, and then you split the profits 50-50. No upfront costs for the investor.
Sounds like a good deal for someone who wants to just sit back and hopefully watch their money grow.
Right. Especially for those wealth management firms and family offices.
Yeah.
Less hassle.
Yeah, I can see the appeal. But I gotta ask, are we just talking theory here, or do they have actual examples of how this all works?
Oh, they've got examples.
Yeah.
They highlighted this property in Nueva Andalucia, Marbella. They call it a recommended offer.
A recommended offer. All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so get this. Estimated market value is somewhere between 1 million and 1.2 million euros.
That's a pretty penny.
Yeah, but the credit purchase price, 400,000 euros.
Wait, hold on. That's like a 60% discount, maybe even more?
Yeah, it's a big difference. Now, if you go to the assignment of foreclosure route, they think you could sell it for around 750,000. And that's before their fee.
Not bad for a short-term play. But what if you go the auction route? What do they say about that?
They're estimating you could snag it for 900,000. Then you could fix it up, sell it later, rent it out, whatever.
So lots of possibilities there. But of course, you got to know what you're doing with the Marbella real estate market. You got to know if it's going to go up or down.
And that brings us to IBERICEX.
Oh, yeah, they're involved too, right?
Big time. They're an urban and real estate consulting firm, and they're bringing a lot of experience and expertise.
Okay, so they're like the brains of the operation.
Well, they're definitely adding a lot to the table, especially when it comes to financial solutions and due diligence.
Makes sense. Real estate can get complicated, especially in a different country.
Exactly. And they're registered with the Bank of Spain. Adds a level of security and credibility to the whole thing.
Okay, so they're not just some fly-by-night operation.
No, not at all. They offer private financing, SPVs, and they're big on due diligence advisory.
SPVs, huh? That sounds a little complicated.
Yeah, it might sound intimidating, but they're really important for larger investors, especially those wealth management firms and family offices.
So break it down for me. What's an SPV and why do they need them?
Think of it like a separate container for your investment. It holds all the assets related to that specific project, so it's separate from everything else you've got.
Oh, okay. So it's like a way to manage risk.
Exactly. It isolates the investment from your other assets, which can also help with taxes and stuff.
Makes sense. So it's all about keeping things organized and minimizing risk.
Exactly. And that's just one of the things IBERICEX brings to the table. They also offer national and international financing options. Huge for larger scale projects.
So they've really got all the bases covered, but we haven't even touched on transparency and security yet.
You're right. We need to talk about their KYC process, but that's a conversation for our next segment.
Okay, so let's get into this whole KYC thing. It's not the most exciting topic, but it's important, right?
Yeah, for sure. Transparency and security are key, especially when we're talking about real estate and big money. You mentioned they have a pretty serious KYC process. What's that all about? Why is it such a big deal for everyone involved?
Well, KYC stands for Know Your Customer. It's basically a way to verify who the investors are, what their financial background is, that sort of thing. Pretty standard in finance, especially with something like real estate.
So it's about protecting the investors, right? Making sure they're not getting caught up in some shady deal.
Exactly. You want to avoid scams and fraud, but it's also good for Marbella Vibes, right? Protects their reputation, keeps them on the right side of the law.
So everyone wins with a good KYC process. More trust, more transparency. Okay, so walk me through it. What does an investor actually have to do?
Well, the first step is usually pretty simple. You register on their platform, give them some basic info about yourself or your company.
Okay, so far so good. What's next?
Then you got to sign a confidentiality agreement, a NDA. Keeps all the sensitive financial info under wraps.
Makes sense. Got to protect that data. Builds trust too.
Absolutely. After the NDA, you'll usually move on to a letter of intent or LOI.
LOI, okay.
Yep.
What's that all about?
It's basically a document that outlines what you're looking to invest in, your goals, and the terms everyone's agreeing to. Make sure everybody's on the same page before things get serious.
Like a roadmap, right?
Yeah, exactly. But once that's all sorted, then the real KYC kicks in. They're going to want to dig deep into your finances.
Time to show them the money, huh? So what are they looking for specifically? Bank statements, tax returns, that kind of thing?
Pretty much. If you're an individual investor, they'll want things like your passport, proof of residence, bank statements to make sure you're good for it. For companies, it's a bit more complex. They'll need to see the company structure, where the money's coming from, who the real owners are.
So they're doing their due diligence, making sure everything's legitimate.
You got it. It's all about minimizing risk, keeping things transparent, and making sure everyone's playing by the rules.
So let's say I pass the test. They've got all my documents, everything checks out. What happens next?
Well, usually you'd reserve the credit at that point. Put down a deposit to show you're serious.
Like a down payment on a house, right?
Yeah, kind of like that. Secures your spot. And then finally, after all that, you've got the notarized signing. Everything's official.
The moment of truth. All that paperwork finally leads to something real.
Yep, that's when you officially get the mortgage credit. Or you win the bid at the auction, depending on what you're going for. And then the real journey begins.
Wow, it's quite a process. But I get it. It's important. Makes you feel more secure knowing they're doing things the right way.
Definitely. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a potential investment, but you can't forget about the basics. Due diligence, compliance, all that. It's not just paperwork, it's about protecting everyone involved.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's not just about making money, it's about making money responsibly.
Absolutely. And Marbella Vibes seems to get that. They're not cutting corners, which is a good sign.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the KYC process. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about control. How much control do investors actually have with these mortgage credit investments?
That's a great question. One of the cool things about investing this way is that you have a lot of say in the judicial process.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that. What does that control actually look like?
So because you're the one holding the mortgage credit, you've got the power to claim the debt from the property owner, and that gives you options. You can either assign the foreclosure, which basically means selling your rights to someone else, or you can get involved in the auction yourself.
So it's not just a passive investment. You can really shape how things play out.
Exactly. You get to choose your own adventure, depending on your risk tolerance and how much time you want to put in.
So if I'm looking for a quick profit and I don't want to deal with owning a property, I can just assign the foreclosure.
Yep, you can cash out quickly, no strings attached.
But if I'm thinking long-term, maybe I want to go for the auction and see if I can get a good deal on the property itself.
Exactly. Then you've got all sorts of options: renovate and sell, rent it out, maybe even live there yourself. It's really up to you.
Wow, so much flexibility. That's pretty cool. It's like they're giving you a toolbox and letting you choose the right tools for the job.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. They're not trying to fit everyone into the same box. They're giving you the power to customize your investment strategy.
Okay, before we wrap up this section, I want to circle back to IBERICEX for a minute. We talked about their financial expertise, but what about their role in making sure the platform is secure and legitimate?
Oh yeah, that's huge. They're not just number crunchers. They're really focused on making sure everything is above board. Compliance is a big part of what they do.
So it's not just about making money, it's about doing it the right way.
Exactly. And the fact that they're registered with the Bank of Spain, that adds a lot of credibility.
Yeah, it's like a seal of approval, right?
Yep.
Shows they're serious about playing by the rules.
Right. It gives investors that extra peace of mind, knowing that the platform is operating within the law and that their money is safe.
All right, before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, anything else about Marbella Vibes that really stands out to you? Any unique features or benefits we haven't touched on yet?
You know, one thing that's interesting is that a lot of their properties are distressed. They're coming from mortgage defaults, financial problems, that sort of thing.
So it's not just about buying low and selling high. It's about maybe helping to revitalize these properties.
Yeah.
Giving them a second chance.
Yeah, there's a bit of a social impact angle there. You're not just making money, you're potentially helping to improve a community.
Yeah, that's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
It adds another dimension to the whole investment equation.
Absolutely. Might be something that appeals to certain investors who are looking for something more than just pure financial gain.
All right, so let's do a quick recap before we jump into the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so far we've really dug into Marbella Vibes' commitment to transparency and security. That whole KYC process is really thorough, which is reassuring.
Yeah, and we talked about the different investment models they offer. They've got options for everyone, whether you're looking for a quick return or you're in it for the long haul.
And we can't forget about IBERICEX. They're bringing a lot of expertise and credibility to the table, especially when it comes to finances and compliance.
But it's important to remember that every investment has its risks. We're going to talk about those next, so stay tuned. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground about Marbella Vibes, but let's be real, no investment is completely risk-free.
Right, there's always some level of risk. And with real estate, well, it's not always smooth sailing.
So let's talk about those risks. What are some of the things that could go wrong with these investments? What are the red flags investors should be watching out for?
Well, the biggest one is probably the real estate market itself. It can be pretty unpredictable. I mean, even though Marbella Vibes is focused on getting those below-market deals,
there's no guarantee those properties will actually go up in value, right?
Exactly. The market can fluctuate, the economy could take a downturn, you never know.
So even with all the due diligence in the world, there's always that element of uncertainty. What else?
The Spanish legal system. It can be a bit of a maze, especially for foreign investors.
Yeah, different laws, different regulations. It can get complicated.
Right. And even though Marbella Vibes and IBERICEX are there to help, investors really need to do their homework. Maybe even get some independent legal advice.
So you're saying don't just take their word for it, do your own research too.
Exactly. Make sure you understand what you're getting into. And then there's the time commitment. Some of these investments require a lot of patience.
Yeah, we talked about that. Assignment of foreclosure is pretty quick, but the auction route can take a while.
Right. And if you end up owning a property, well, that's a whole other level of involvement. Managing a property takes time and effort.
So it's not for the faint of heart.
Oh.
All right, so we've talked about the risks, the challenges, but let's zoom out for a second. What are the big takeaways here? What should our listeners be thinking about as they weigh these opportunities?
Well, I think Marbella Vibes offers a pretty interesting way to tap into the Costa del Sol real estate market, especially with their focus on getting those discounted properties.
Yeah, they've definitely got a unique approach. And they've got options for different types of investors. Short-term, long-term, hands-on, hands-off.
Right. And their partnership with IBERICEX is a big plus. It adds a lot of expertise, makes the whole thing feel more secure.
And they're clearly serious about transparency. That whole KYC process is proof of that.
But, like we said, no investment is without risk. You got to weigh those risks against the potential rewards. Think about the market, the legal stuff, the time commitment.
It all comes down to your personal goals, your risk tolerance, and how much time and energy you're willing to put in.
Exactly. We've given you the information, the tools to analyze the situation. Now it's up to you to decide if it's the right fit.
And if you want to learn more, definitely check out the resources we provided. And of course, you can always reach out to Marbella Vibes directly. They're happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely. Do your research, ask the tough questions, and never invest more than you can afford to lose. That's the golden rule.
Words to live by. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Marbella Vibes. Hopefully you found it informative, maybe even a little bit inspiring.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of investment opportunities. Until then, happy investing, everyone!